Today I want to talk about Ohio State and how their only opponent is one they can't really see. And all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes and how the only opponent that they really have to worry about is one they cannot see. Because as many of you probably have learned, Wyatt Davis and Shaun were both cleared to play college football this fall. Both Wyatt Davis and Shaun had opted out of playing college football when it didn't look like there was going to be any road for them to play college football at all. The Big Ten had canceled fall football on August 11th and reinstated it just a couple of weeks ago with the kickoff to the Big Ten season set for October 24th. Now, if you look at Ohio State's depth chart, you see NFL draft prospects all over the map. And what has been remarkable about this particular time is how many players have returned to their college football programs after opting out because they absolutely want to play football for one last year. Jalen Mayfield at Michigan is another example of this. Rondale Moore at Purdue is yet another example of this. We've had guys that have continued to opt out as well, like Javon Holland. But when you look at Ohio State and you see why Wyatt Davis and Shaun, two dudes that have first-round draft grades, have returned to the Ohio State Buckeyes, you find out they want to win a national championship. That's all there is left for them to do. Ohio State has not won a national championship in 6 years, which, ain't a drought because, Oklahoma is the squad in 20 years, and Oklahoma is not going to win a national championship in 2020. Oklahoma, like LSU, managed to eliminate itself from college football playoff contention in the first week of conference play. Ohio State gets to watch this carnage in the SEC, in the ACC, and in the Big 12 before they even got to take a snap. And when they do take a snap, it's not just Wyatt Davis. It's also Justin Fields, right? It's also Mookie Cooper. It's also G. Scott. I almost said Gil Scott, not the same thing. It's also guys like Josh Proctor, who needs to make the leap to solidify that secondary in Kerry Combs' first year as defense coordinator, but it's also what they have at tailback. Trey Sermon has apparently impressed everybody at Ohio State since arriving in March after choosing the grad transfer from Oklahoma. He arrived there just after Master Teague had blown out his Achilles. He was expected to be the number one tailback on the depth chart in 2020. Managed to make all Big Ten third team in garbage time carries behind J.K. Dobbins of all people, right? J.K. Dobbins rushed for over 2,000 yards and was playing on Monday Night Football just last night. Matter of fact, I was looking at the Ravens, and I'm going, man, y'all draft like y'all are just in my living room. James Prochet was one of the most prolific wide receivers in all of college football last year at SMU. Of course, I've just mentioned J.K. Dobbins. Added to that, guys like Devin Duvernay, who might have been the fastest guy at wide receiver in college football last year out of Texas. And then you go to the other side, you see guys like Malik Harrison, and on it goes, Mark Andrews, Hollywood Brown. You know what it is for Oklahoma. But as we're talking about the running back situation at Ohio State, I'm going, where's the weakness here, man? Like, Master Teague apparently crushed his rehab, so he's going to be ready to play. Like, that's a silver lining, pun intended, if you're a Buckeye fan, right? You absolutely get Master Teague at full strength for the opener of your Big Ten season. That was not on the table in March. That was not on the table in July. Now it is very much what you are expecting to do, right? So you have Master Teague, you have Marcus Crowley, and you have Trey Sermon. You have an outstanding offensive line. You have an outstanding quarterback who basically could walk into the Heisman. All he's got to do is not lose a game. And then you got the number one wide receiver in the 2020 class in Julian Fleming, who I expect to get absolute snaps. But more than that, you got Garrett Wilson, who I love, right? Garrett Wilson's still one of my favorite recruiting stories to tell because man's coming out of Lake Travis in Austin. And yes, he's from Ohio, but he went to high school and played high school football in Austin, Texas. Means that probably going to get a lot of SEC looks from A&M, from LSU. You're going to get your Big 12 looks from Oklahoma and Texas. And many people from Austin think that kids from Austin should go to Texas. When Garrett Wilson was asked why he chose Ohio State over Texas, he said, because I want to go where I'm going to get developed. Yo, not only is that shade at Texas, we got to actually mention here, Ohio State has not had a first-round draft prospect at wide receiver in over a dozen years, right? We're talking about Anthony Gonzalez, who was old enough to run for Congress, right? We're talking about Teague Jr., who's out there just fighting Father Time. Now, I also know Michael Thomas is the best wide receiver in all of the NFL. But that dude was not a first-round draft pick. You get what I'm saying here. Garrett Wilson has that kind of talent, and he was returning punts as a freshman for Ohio State. The problem Ohio State's going to run into is the 8-game schedule and the age of the COVID, right? Just before I sat down to do this segment, the Titans and Steelers game was called off because the Titans had 8 COVID positives, right? Just the other day, Notre Dame had 18 COVID positives. Ohio State is going to have to hope and pray that its opponents don't pick up the COVID, and then it's going to have to really buckle down and really take care of each other for 2 months to make sure they don't have any COVID positives. Because the only thing that can keep Ohio State out of the college football playoff is that they did not play enough games to qualify. Problem is, we don't know how many games it takes to qualify. So if Ohio State played one game, and let's say that one game is Nebraska, and they beat Nebraska 70-0, and they don't play again for 4 weeks, and let's say they beat Michigan 35-31, are you going to let Ohio State into the college football playoff? It's a really good discussion because you know the kind of talent that is on that roster, and you know it's one of the 3 best teams in college football, as Alabama and Clemson are the other 2, and you would expect those 3 teams to make it, and then we'll see whether or not we get another SEC team or a Big 12 team like Texas can run the table. But it remains to be seen, right? Like, would you want a Florida in that lost the SEC championship game, but that's its only loss, right, is to Alabama? Or are you going to take an Ohio State team that hasn't played all that much? And then you have the conversation about whether or not it's fair for that Ohio State team to be playing the college football playoff, knowing that they are basically fresh, having played 2 games. It's an interesting discussion that I would really love to see bear out. But for it to bear out, we got to have college football, right? And we've seen games canceled and games canceled and games canceled. We're nearly 2 dozen games into being canceled, right? On top of all of that, we're having really good discussions, I think, about what this is going to do for recruiting, right? Because nobody gets to hold official visits this season at all. Nobody gets to go recruit in person at all. What does that do for your recruiting in a year in which maybe you're good, maybe you're not, right? Like Oklahoma managing to pick up Jalil Farouk at the time that they did pick up Jalil Farouk tells me 2 things, and I need to do a segment on this. But the first is that Emeka Egbuka is shooing Ohio State, right? That's a spot that was, I think, left out there for Egbuka when it became clear that nobody's going to be able to travel in style, meaning official visits. I think that kind of slowed it up, especially when you look at what he's going to be able to play with and guys like C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller. To say nothing of how the Buckeyes have recruited in this 2021 class, you know that I'm very excited about it. We'll see how that goes. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.